The war now unfolding around Iran, Israel, U.S. forces in the Strait of Hormuz has become a contest not only of missiles and drones, but of narrative escalation and perception. In recent days, Iranian state-linked media and affiliated outlets have circulated a wave of dramatic battlefield claims, downed drones, threatened energy choke points, intercepted aircraft, and vows of continued retaliation. Some of those assertions align in part with broader independently reported developments. Others remain unverified or have not been confirmed by U.S., Israeli, or other independent official sources. What is clear is that the confrontation has entered a far more dangerous phase, with regional energy security, maritime traffic, and the risk of wider war all now deeply in play. As of March 24, 2026, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, according to the White House, and Benjamin Netanyahu remains prime minister of Israel, according to Israel's prime minister's office. Those current roles matter because both men sit at the center of a crisis that has already spilled well beyond direct exchanges between Iran and Israel and into the wider Gulf region. Official U.S. and international reporting shows that the current war expanded after coordinated U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran on February 28, 2026, triggering Iranian retaliation, deep regional anxiety, and severe strain on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. One of the most eye-catching claims circulating from Iranian sources concerns a U.S.-made Lucas drone allegedly shot down by Iran. There is a factual basis for the existence of that system. U.S. Central Command announced in December 2025 that it had launched a low-cost unmanned combat attack system, or LUCAS, task force in the Middle East, describing the drone as part of a broader push to field affordable, effective one-way attack capabilities. CENTCOM said those drones were designed for flexible launch options and autonomous long-range missions, placing them in the same broad operational category that has made Iranian one-way attack drones, especially the Shahed family, so influential in recent wars. But the leap from the existence of the platform to the certainty of a specific shootdown is much harder to verify. Iranian media has released footage, it says, shows wreckage from a destroyed drone, yet no authoritative U.S. confirmation was immediately available in the reporting reviewed, and independent verification of the images remains limited. In conflicts like this one, footage of twisted metal and crash sites often races across state and social media long before investigators, militaries, or outside analysts can establish what exactly was hit by whom and under what circumstances. That gap between claim and confirmation has become one of the central features of this war. Still, even without confirmed attribution for every aircraft loss, the broader trend is beyond dispute. Drones are no longer auxiliary tools in Middle Eastern warfare. They are central weapons of strategy, pressure, and attrition. Cheap one-way attack systems can threaten bases, cities, ships, and infrastructure at a cost far below that of traditional strike aircraft or advanced missile inventories. The Shahed design and its variants helped reshape the battlefield in Ukraine, where officials and analysts documented mass use of Iranian-designed or Iranian-inspired loitering munitions from late 2022 onward. Now, with the U.S. fielding Lucas and Iran continuing to rely on a mature drone ecosystem, the battlefield has become a contest between rival models of affordable aerial warfare. The same logic is now visible around the Gulf. Reuters reported this month that sea drones have already been used in attacks on oil tankers, underscoring how unmanned systems are no longer confined to overland military targets. The maritime domain, especially around the Strait of Hormuz, has become one of the most volatile fronts in the crisis. The waterway is one of the world's most critical energy choke points, with about a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas flows transiting through it. Even partial disruption there reverberates instantly through global markets, insurance calculations, and state-level diplomatic decision-making. That is why Iranian warnings about the strait have drawn such intense attention. Recent reporting from Reuters and the Associated Press shows that Tehran has indeed threatened severe consequences if attacked further, and has used its position around Hormuz to disrupt maritime traffic and increase global pressure. However, the details matter. Iran has not simply declared a universally acknowledged and total closure in the legal sense. Rather, it has issued restrictive warnings, disrupted shipping, threatened full closure, and signaled that vessels tied to countries it sees as adversaries face special danger. Those distinctions are important because they shape how naval coalitions, insurers, and major importers respond. The political rhetoric has hardened just as sharply as the military exchanges. Reporting from Reuters shows that Iran has toughened its negotiating position and is demanding major concessions before any direct talks with Washington could become plausible. According to that reporting, Tehran is seeking not symbolic gestures but concrete outcomes, an end to the conflict, guarantees against renewed attacks, compensation for wartime damage, and influence over the future arrangements around the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, President Trump has publicly pushed the language of surrender in the opposite direction, calling for Iran's unconditional surrender earlier this month. That matters because it underscores a key reality of the present crisis. Maximalist language is no longer coming from one side alone. Some of the most dramatic language attributed to Tehran in state-linked coverage goes further still, suggesting Iranian officials are openly demanding that Trump and Netanyahu surrender personally. That specific formulation has not been established in the high-quality reporting reviewed here. What is better supported is that Iranian military and political factions are signaling continued resistance, a refusal to accept externally imposed curbs, and a readiness to continue missile and drone attacks if current conditions persist. The distinction matters. Escalatory rhetoric is real. The exact wording and scope of some viral claims remain much murkier. That ambiguity also hangs over reported aerial incidents. Iranian outlets have claimed that air defense units engaged an enemy F-15 near Hormuz Island. At least some press coverage outside Iran has repeated the claim, but authoritative confirmation from the U.S. military or Israel was not present in the reporting reviewed. In a theater saturated with aircraft from multiple countries, allied patrols, surveillance missions, and air defense activity, such claims can spread rapidly even when the underlying facts remain unsettled. What can be said with confidence is that any credible report of a hostile air engagement over or near Hormuz instantly raises the stakes because of the location's strategic sensitivity. The same caution applies to claims about downed MQ-9 Reaper drones, and especially to suggestions that Iran may have successfully hit an F-35 stealth fighter. Drone losses in a high-intensity regional war are entirely plausible, and some reporting has pointed to substantial U.S. aircraft losses, particularly unmanned systems. But precise numbers, individual crash causes, and the status of top-tier stealth aircraft are the kinds of details that demand strong corroboration. In modern conflict reporting, the most cinematic claims often travel first. The most reliable evidence usually arrives later. Even so, the strategic picture is grim enough without embellishment. Associated Press and Reuters reporting shows the conflict has widened geographically and diplomatically, with attacks, troop movements, and military threats extending across Iran, Israel, Lebanon, Gulf states, and the sea lanes that bind them. The U.S. has reinforced the region. Diplomatic channels remain uncertain, and indirect mediation efforts involving countries such as Pakistan, Turkey, and Egypt have yet to produce a breakthrough. Iran denies direct talks with Washington, even as Trump says conversations are underway. That contradiction alone captures how unstable and opaque the moment has become. The energy dimension may be the most globally consequential. The International Energy Agency's chief has warned that the current shock could rival or exceed earlier energy crises, and reporting across major outlets points to severe disruption in oil and gas flows linked to the conflict and to tensions in Hormuz. India's government, for example, has already highlighted the importance of the strait in its own energy security calculations after a call between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Trump. Maritime disruption in this corridor is not a regional side story. It is a global economic pressure point. Against that backdrop, recent threats involving power plants and regional infrastructure have added another layer of danger. The Associated Press and other reporting show that Iran has warned U.S. ally states that their energy and desalination facilities could become targets if Washington strikes Iranian power infrastructure. Tehran has also tied these threats to the future of Hormuz, signaling that damage to Iranian energy capacity could trigger even broader retaliation. Such warnings move the conflict from military assets alone toward the systems that underpin daily life, industrial activity, and state stability across the Gulf. The war's information environment is also profoundly shaped by who is speaking. Iranian claims often emerge first through state television, the Revolutionary Guards' media ecosystem, or aligned agencies. U.S. accounts typically come through CENTCOM, the White House, or leaks to major news organizations. Israeli messaging moves through the Prime Minister's office, the military, and selected media briefings. Each side is trying to define momentum, magnify the enemy's losses in Project Control. That does not mean every official statement is false. It means every major wartime claim has to be read with context, incentives, and timing in mind. What emerges from the verified reporting is a stark but more disciplined picture than the most fevered battlefield montages suggest. Iran is under sustained pressure but remains capable of retaliating across multiple domains. Israel continues to strike aggressively and promises further action. The United States is deeply involved, both militarily and politically, while President Trump balances coercive threats with public references to possible talks. Hormuz has become a strategic lever, not just a shipping lane, and low-cost drones, whether Shahed-derived, Lucas-type, or maritime variants, are no longer side weapons. They are central to how all sides now impose cost, fear, and uncertainty. One reason the rhetoric feels so explosive is that both substance and symbolism are colliding. A drone wreck matters tactically only up to a point, but imagery of a destroyed American system, a threatened F-15, a hit radar site, or a disrupted tanker route carries psychological and political weight far beyond the immediate military effect. In wars fought under constant digital visibility, spectacle becomes part of strategy. Governments, militias, and state-linked channels do not merely report the war, they perform it. And in doing so, they try to shape what adversaries, allies, and domestic audiences think the next move should be. There is another danger here, too. When leaders and institutions speak in the language of total victory or surrender, room for de-escalation narrows. Trump has already used the phrase unconditional surrender toward Iran. Iranian military voices, meanwhile, have spoken in terms of unrelenting retaliation and maximal demands. Israeli leaders continue to frame the campaign as necessary and unfinished. Those are not rhetorical habits that make compromise easier. They are the language of prolonged confrontation in which every strike, every drone intercept, every damaged tanker, and every blurred piece of wreckage can become justification for the next round. At the same time, diplomacy has not vanished. Reuters, App, and others report that indirect mediation efforts are still alive, even if fragile. Pakistan has offered to host talks. Gulf states are maneuvering. European powers are pushing rival diplomatic formulas at the United Nations. India has spoken publicly about the need to keep Hormuz open. Yet none of that changes the immediate operational reality. Combat continues, shipping remains under pressure, and the cost of miscalculation is rising by the day. The battlefield, then, is not just over Iran or Israel. It is over the future of deterrence in the Middle East, over whether affordable drone warfare can offset superior traditional military assets, over whether maritime choke points can be weaponized without triggering uncontrollable escalation, and over whether public ultimatums leave any room for diplomacy to survive. A single drone claim does not decide those questions. But taken together, the latest wave of reported attacks, threats, and counterclaims shows how quickly this war is moving from contained confrontation towards something much broader and harder to reverse. And that is the real significance of the moment, not whether every viral clip is genuine or whether every state claim holds up under forensic scrutiny, though those questions matter. It is that the architecture of escalation is now fully visible. Iran is signaling endurance. Israel is signaling persistence. The United States is signaling both force and conditional openness to talks. Global markets are signaling alarm. The Strait of Hormuz is signaling fragility. In that environment, even unverified footage can have real-world consequences because the war has entered a stage where perception itself is a weapon and where every new claim, confirmed or not, lands on terrain already primed for further conflict. A few key direct lines that are central to the current crisis and are supported by recent reporting define the tone of the moment. He said unconditional surrender. President Donald Trump used that phrase in public remarks about Iran earlier this month, a formulation that sharply escalated the political stakes and complicated diplomatic off-ramps. He said productive talks had taken place. Trump has publicly described contacts with Iran in those terms, even as Tehran denies that direct negotiations are underway. He said the Strait of Hormuz remains accessible to all maritime traffic except vessels associated with countries it considers adversaries. That was the substance of Iran's recent position as conveyed in Reuters reporting, capturing both Tehran's pressure tactics and its effort to stop short of a universally framed total closure. He said retaliatory operations would continue. That is the broad thrust of Iran's current military and political posture, as described across recent coverage of its hardened stance and continued missile and drone attacks. He said the need to keep the Strait of Hormuz open was critical. That reflects the position publicly emphasized as world powers respond to the deepening energy and shipping crisis around the Gulf.